Hello, everybody. I'd like to get started because we have quite a lot of material to cover. So I do want to start promptly. So I just want to say hello, everybody from London. A little bit of proof that there is occasionally sunshine over here and that it's quite bright today. So apologies if it's a bit glary on my side. But I did want to get started and obviously welcome you all to a session we're running focused, if you like, on sort of what some of the capabilities are that we offer in terms of preparing your content, submission-related content, when that content resides within SharePoint. So we ran various sessions on some specific capabilities around report generation or kind of content validation at a Word or PDF level, where we talk about the different types of repositories at the same time. This is really focused very much on how you deal with content specifically where the repository is SharePoint. Although a lot of pretty much everything that I talk about here is equally valid regardless of the type of repository where your content resides. So with that, just quickly go through the agenda. I'll start off talking about the actual preparation of content in its original native format, in this case, Word. Some things we can do to help you prepare your Word content for inclusion, for conversion, and then inclusion into your dossiers, etc. as well. We'll look at then the process of actually creating renditions for your content in SharePoint, where SharePoint doesn't really have its own kind of built-in rendering, if you like, or the concept of a rendition. So we'll look at how you could render content and store the renditions, either individual PDF conversions or multiple global conversions for use in different health authorities or simultaneously. So have a look at that briefly, and then look at how you could take multiple pieces of content and actually generate reports automatically, kind of collate multiple files together, fully automatically merged, tables of contents, headers, footers applied, pagination, etc. Again, all seamlessly, when that content resides in SharePoint. So we'll look at that as well. And then focus a little bit on the PDF preparation stages, ensuring your PDFs are truly submission ready and compliant. And again, how you can automate that process and automatically report on things and fix many elements as well. And we'll look at the end some other use cases, specific use cases around helping you migrate content from one repository type to another, etc. also. So we'll cover some additional ad hoc kind of elements as well at the end. With that, I did just want to say before we start, anybody who signed up, do have a little surprise. Every about 25th registrant will receive a little gift from us. Don't worry, it's nothing that should get you in trouble with your organizations. It's things typically we provide. If you attend, we meet you at conferences and so on as well. But obviously some nice little gifts that we'd like to send you. So if you receive an email following this session, don't be surprised if we're asking for your address. It's just so we could ship something to you if you're okay with that. So don't think that's a spam email or anything. That is a genuine question there. Just so we don't repeat the Pepsi's jump jet kind of issue here. Disclaimer, we're not going to be shipping you anything like the car that's in the picture or under the covers in the picture, just to be clear as well. With that, I do just want to sort of give a quick intro in terms of the content prep, really the challenges that obviously you're typically facing, and the pretty standard elements around. Typically, the process is slow. It's quite long-winded. It's typically resource intensive. There's a lot of manual steps involved with different people preparing content at different stages of its life cycle as well. And different content, whether it's in Word, whether it's in PDF, whether it's then becoming submission ready, you may pass that off to different people along the way. So a number of different resources are involved. And again, a lot of those steps can be quite manual. Again, anything that's manual introduces an element of risk with that. And obviously, because you're typically talking multiple tools across different teams, the whole process can become quite complex and require more training than really should be necessary. So there's typically a training burden using the types of tools that may not have been designed for that specific use case, but you're having to use them just to meet the need there as well. So typical some of the common challenges around preparing the content, whether that's in SharePoint or any other repository, the same kind of challenges are typically faced. And we'll obviously address these as we go. What we're talking about, obviously, I'm going to focus on here is how you could leverage our transformation technology, which ultimately takes content from any source. We're going to focus here on SharePoint as the input location. We're going to be able to analyze that content as it comes through or transform it in different steps in our workflows. We can then enrich the content in different ways and then output the results somewhere else. So it's ultimately a transformation platform that allows you to build workflows to pull content from different locations, do different things with them, and return the results somewhere else or back to where it came from. It can ultimately be scaled. Ultimately, it can be deployed wherever you need, in your own data centers, in the cloud, on Windows, Linux, etc., containerized environments as well to get the peak performance. And again, it can scale up regardless of the size organization, whether you're a small service organization, a startup biotech, or a top-tier pharma company. Ultimately, the platform is able to scale regardless of size and volume of content. What we do ultimately is take content from different repositories, different locations, whether that's SharePoint, Vault, Kara, Alfresco, DocuBridge, etc., from different content types, and then convert the content to PDF. It's more than just converting. The platform can be used to automatically OCR content where necessary. So you end up with searchable text rather than flat images. Can apply watermarks if need be at different points in the life cycle to apply draft or confidential watermarking, etc. Leveraging the metadata where possible to automate that process and what would be included. Same thing with your headers, footers, and pagination. Again, that can be automated. Either you could leverage what's in the document or apply other header, footer information and pagination based on attributes from your SharePoint environments or wherever the content's coming from. Be able to validate the content in source or PDF format. We'll talk about that in a moment. We can merge multiple files together, split them up, so you don't exceed regulated, the regulatory guidelines on file size limits. Bookmark the content so it becomes navigation friendly. Apply cover pages, tables of contents if necessary for the reports, apply or remove security, and end up with a fully compliant PDF file. The idea is, though, that it should really be as if the PDF has gone through a publishing tool, but without having to go through the entire publishing process to get there. So really, at the point where that initial rendition or PDF is created, you're really much closer to what you would need to submit to the health authority. So ultimately, again, we're going to be leveraging the rendering platform or the transformation platform to perform many of these steps fully automatically in the background. And we'll look at some of the specific use cases here. So the idea is that we have a workbench, which we're just going to build different workflows, and we're going to define the what, where, when, how of each use case. So where does the content reside in SharePoint, which library or which folders within libraries, or different repositories obviously have different concepts there. Where does the content reside? What do you want to do with it? And where do you want the results to go? And we can add logic in here, and we'll look at some of those things as we go through as well. But ultimately, we can build up as many of these workflows as you like. And you could point to different repositories, SharePoint, Viva, Documentum, Kara, DocBridge. You can have different pointers from one single system to all of those environments as well, including just the folders on your network somewhere. So we basically have this, we build up these workflows. We simply drag and drop elements to build up the flow through the, for the workflow, for that use case. You configure these things and let them run in the background. The idea is there's no user interaction at all. So everything I show you will be fully automated. These workflows are sitting in the background. When you tell it to trigger, that's when it will happen. When you set a certain status of the document in SharePoint, or you send it to a specific queue, depending on the repository type, that it will automatically go through the DocShifter workflow. So just a quick comment, as I go through the specific use cases, there will be a link in the chat that I will post there, basically to allow you, if there's any specific topic you want to go through in more detail. We've run a series of webinars where we touch on some of these subjects in more detail. But obviously, if you want to ask some specific questions or have a specific demo, just let us know, follow the URL in the chat, and we can obviously arrange a more in-depth discussion too. But maybe if we start off with the automated Word content preparation, so at a Word level already. So before we even convert to PDF, what are some of the things we can do to help you prepare your content for conversion? So the document validator, the DocShifter Doc Validator, allows for some automated Word checks to be performed and fixes. So we can open the Word, analyze the content for comment-related issues, images, headings, watermarks, bookmarks, paragraph issues, table issues, styles, and so on. So there's a whole heap of issues we can look for when we analyze the content, and then actually either produce a report that kind of shows you what issues it's found, or it can actually return a fixed version of the document. So again, this can integrate directly into SharePoint, specific folders, or whole entire libraries as you like. You can integrate this into an automated flow with your life cycles. So as you change your lifecycle state within SharePoint, these workflows would engage automatically and pick up your content for analysis, without any human manual intervention whatsoever. So we're going to look at various linking issues, heading issues, etc. You define which issues you want to look for, and what, if you're going to fix them, how exactly you should fix them as well. So there's some parameters you can set to say, maybe in the US, you perform slightly different manipulation than if you're talking in Japan or Europe. So you can set some different parameters, different rules, depending on where that content is going to be used. And as I say, that report that's generated or the fixed documents can then be returned either back into SharePoint or somewhere else if you need. So with that, if I take a simple workflow, it's just a 3-step workflow of taking content from a demo environment in SharePoint. I then do a doc validation. So I'm going to perform a series of checks on the content, and I'm going to return the results somewhere back in SharePoint. Simple workflow. Each step has some configuration to say, okay, I'm going to monitor this location in SharePoint. Where is the location in SharePoint I want to monitor? What's the library? What's the folder? How often do I want to look in that location, etc.? What is the trigger for that? So I can say, set a column or any attribute in there to say, this is the trigger to send that request. And that can just literally be a check in SharePoint to say, it's a validate checkbox. And either a user can manually set that value to be on, in which case the document will be sent, or that could be set automatically in your life cycles. So we basically define those triggers in the workflow. And then you say, what checks do you want to perform and how do you want to fix things if you say you want to fix? And apologies, the red box is slightly misaligned there. And then where do you want the results to go? But in this case, I'm putting things back into SharePoint to a different library, but you could return the results to the same folder, just as a PDF document alongside the Word file or whatever it may be, or as a new version of the document after it's been fixed. So we just define the configurations for each step in the workflow. Very straightforward. So if you have a look at what that would look like in SharePoint, if I just have a very simple setup here with a library, a demo library, and I have a validate folder in here, I have a very simple Word document that has a couple of columns of info. I've got a validated column and a fixed column. And I can simply define in here, if I check the box to say I want to fix, it may sort of go through the workflow and actually fix the content. If I don't set fix, it will just generate a report, for example. And then a trigger might be just validated. Once that trigger is set, it would actually send a request off to DocShifter automatically. So once that happens, you could return the results. And in this case, the results are returned to a different location, a different library. The output rendition, you can define that though. It could be the same library. And then I've either got, for example, a report that shows me what issues it's found in PDF format, or a fixed version of the Word document. In this case, I'm putting it in a separate folder. So what I can see in the report ultimately is a PDF report that basically just lists every issue that it's found in the document for the checks that you told it to perform. You don't have to perform all of them. You can say which ones you do and don't want to. So it tells me some summary of the info, a summary info about the document, and then a series of list of all the checks it was told to perform and how many of each of those checks, how many issues of each of those checks it's actually found. Then how many it was able to correct if you told it to correct, and then how many were left unresolved. So you get that summary to begin with, and then you get the detail for each check to say where each of the errors it's got, and then lists exactly where that issue is found. Where are the manual page breaks been inserted? Where do you have comments remaining? Where do you have cross-reference issues, heading numbering issues, tables not fitting the page, unused bookmarks, etc. So a big report that shows you every single item, and that report can again be used by an author or somebody whose job it is to actually, obviously, analyze and fix the content, and they can use that report to update the Word document. So that's one way: produce the report and update the document. Use that to help you update the document. The other option is to let it automatically fix the content too, in which case, this is again a very simple dummy document, clearly not a regulatory document here, but It just highlights some of the issues you may face. Heading numbers that are out of sequence. We have 1 followed by 3, then 4. I have empty paragraphs in the document. I have watermarks existing in the content, tables that aren't fitting the page width, heading white spaces where I've got additional spaces, padding spaces at the end of the heading titles, images not in line, etc. So a simple kind of conversions. Once that document is analyzed and fixed, all of those things could have been fixed for you automatically. So my heading numbers have been updated sequentially correctly. I've got empty paragraphs have been removed. My tables fitting the page width, my images, the text is now in line with the images, comments have been removed, etc. Well, the actions that you've told it to perform will be performed. You don't have to do everything. You can decide what you do and don't want to take place. So from a Word content preparation, this is what we could do. And again, this is fully automated. There's no need to go into Word, engage on anything. This just happens automatically in the background and returns this updated fixed document or the report for you. Moving on, obviously, then to taking that content, creating a PDF rendition for it. Again, either you can create one common PDF that's suitable for use in different health authorities, or you can take, the individual Word documents that may be reused across regions and actually create specific PDF renditions for each region, where you really meet the slight different nuances in requirements across them as well. So you can create multiple, you have one file in, multiple renditions out. One of the things we can do there is really leverage in our workflows the metadata that's available in systems like SharePoint. So we can look at things like the value of a document. So we'll look at a parameter, one of the columns of info in SharePoint, and look for the value of it. So I've got an EU parameter that I'm looking for. If that value is true, ultimately it knows that I should take a specific route through the workflow. In other words, it will create a European rendition, an EMA rendition. If the FDA check is set to true, it will create an FDA rendition, PMDA, etc. So we could basically set these parameters to look at the metadata available and then act accordingly as well. So you can really leverage that to help you automate the process more. So again, we look at the attribute to check in SharePoint, and then we define the routes to follow. Depending on the route to follow, you may have different settings for EMA renditions compared to PMDA, compared to Health Canada, etc. So each one of them can have slight differences in the requirements. Things like how many levels of bookmarks should it be included? 5. How many should be open when you open the PDF file up? What PDF version do you want to use? And most regions accept 1.4 to 1.7, but sometimes you may want to submit at 1.7. Other countries may be 1.5 or 6 still. You're able to kind of be flexible and create those renditions automatically, simultaneously from the same source content. So if I take that, showing you in SharePoint, if I take that single source document and all I do is I just need to check an option to say that's the trigger, for the request to take place. And again, that can be automated, or it could just be somebody literally manually checking a box to say, I want a rendition now. So it's up to you. You can be manual or automated. The results will come back again, stored back in SharePoint. And again, the differences could be if you take a European rendition of the file, you may have the tables and figures scattered throughout all the bookmarks, the rest of the bookmarks in the tree. So you see my tables and figures and etc. will be, scattered or mixed within the other headings in the bookmark tree. Whereas the same document processed with a different configuration for Japan, for example, they may want to group all the table bookmarks at the end of the bookmark tree. So instead of them being scattered or spread throughout the rest of the bookmarks, they're just grouped nicely at the end, for tables, figures, diagrams, whatever you like, can all be kind of separated. So those are some of the differences, and there could be PDF version, there could be all sorts of differences between the two. But again, those could have been created fully simultaneously. If we then look at how you could kind of take multiple files together and generate reports, you could really have different routes to say, okay, I want to look at an attribute that defines what type of report is this, to define is this a clinical report, is it an IMPD, is it a study report, is it a SOP or a training guide? And depending on the value of that, you might take different routes in the workflow to say, here are the options I want, or the elements I want for the report of that type as well. So we basically have some routing to look at the piece of metadata and then take different routes depending on the value of it. So in this case, I'm just looking at the document type. If it's clinical, it will take one route. If it's IMPD, it'll take a different route. And everything else will take one other route. What that would mean is if I take, what all I'm doing then, all I'm left to do is create a zip file, basically create the collection of content. It's the only thing that you have to do manually is define what content needs to be included in that report. And in something like SharePoint, there's no virtual documents or binders like you may have in a Documentum or a Kara repository or Viva. You can create a zip file or a folder, and that will be the starting point. You'll be saying, okay, I want to take this collection of documents, and then the rest of it, will be automated. You just create that zip file, and then it would automatically go through the workflow, be picked up by the workflow. Everything will be converted into PDF. All the individual documents will be created to PDF. They'll all be merged in the correct order. Cover pages will be added. Again, leveraging metadata, so you could apply automatically elements of metadata, include those in the cover page, instead of having to have fixed text, etc. Add headers and footers automatically. Apply pagination at a report level. So you may have document pagination. You may need to have a report level pagination as well. Tables of contents can be added to cover the entire content of your report. Watermarks applied. You may need to split the file up at the end. So instead of it being one single PDF file that's enormous, due to file size limits and restrictions in the guidelines, you may want to break it up based on the file size or the number of pages. If you're as old as I am and remember paper publishing where it was 300 to 400 page binders, you can split it up either by page count or by file size. At the end, each individual file that's created, whether it's one single file or multiple split volumes, each one of those will be fully compliant and saved back into the repository, either SharePoint or wherever else you need. So ultimately, all of that is manual. The only thing, is automated. The only manual step left is the first one, just to create the zip file or the collection of content that makes up the report, and that's it. The rest of it's fully automatic. You don't need separate tools for each of these. So if I look at what that would look like in the SharePoint, I'm using a zip as an example. I got basically a 2.6 non-clinical summary zip file, and that's just a zip file that's made up of multiple 2.6.x documents inside it. And if I was to then process that, either it could create a single PDF file, as in the yellow box, that would be one single PDF file for the entire collection, or I could have split it up. In this case, I simply said, I want that to be split up into 10 megabyte files, for example, and then it's actually created, in this case, 9 separate volumes. They're all the same report, but it's just split based on file size or page count. And you can define the naming structure, the naming methods for this as well. And what that would look like if you open them up is ultimately a PDF or PDF series of PDFs that has the bookmarks, the relevant bookmarks for either the entire report or just for that section if it's been split up. You have your cover page that includes metadata like the report name pulled from SharePoint, the health authorities involved, who last modified the report, who was created by, etc. Any metadata value can be applied automatically here. And of course, tables of contents can be added. And again, these are tables of contents that span across multiple documents, all of the documents in the report, and again, fully automatically generated. Any link of any kind or any bookmark will, of course, be compliant. Everything will be set to inherit zoom, hyperlinks will be blue, etc. All of those things will be defined as well automatically when the PDFs are created. If you then look at obviously the validation of the PDF content. So we take the PDFs that are generated or PDFs that you've been supplied with from your external CROs or external authoring parties. You can then actually analyze that content for issues in the PDF. It's basically like your checklist, before you include documents into your submission or before you submit them, things you might want to check around, file size limits, make sure you don't have any broken links or bookmarks. There's no security, it's been optimized, fonts have been embedded correctly. All the things you might check for individually, document by document, you can fully automate as well. And this will basically analyze it. As I say, whether DocShifter was used to create the rendition, whatever tool it is, you can still perform these checks as well. And all we do there is take the content from your repository. Again, can be integrated in the same way as any other workflow. Perform all the checks, only the ones that you want to perform. And you can obviously fix elements as well. And then the report is generated either back into SharePoint or the fixed PDF is returned back there as well. I'll just show you in this case just the report, but obviously ultimately we could fix most of these things as well. It just summarizes elements from the PDF that's been processed, how many pages, just some high-level details about the file. And then it summarizes each check that it performed in a simple pass or fail. So it's like your checklist to say, has this PDF file been optimized? Do I have any broken links? All my hyperlinks blue? Do I have a TOC if it's expecting one, etc. So pass, fail on every single check. That's the first thing you get in the table. So that's your checklist. And then you get a detailed breakdown of each issue that it's found and exactly where that issue was found. If you've got fonts that haven't been embedded, what fonts are they? If you got broken, bookmarks that aren't open correctly, where does that start? Where do you have problems with hyperlinks, etc.? It's not optimized. What text is blue that isn't a hyperlink? Things like that. It can help you identify text that's been inserted as a placeholder for hyperlinks that you'll add later on in your publishing tool or your hyperlinking tools. It will help you guide you to where those those placeholders have been placed. So it's a useful guidance for you. Some other use cases as well. So as well as all those things, there are some other ways you can use the platform as well. So some of these I already touched on: the PDF Plus, the validation modules, the reports. But most of what I've been speaking about has been where the output is PDF. But ultimately, we can also convert to other formats as well. So if you've got older legacy formats like RTF or TXT files or .doc files, you can convert those to DocX. Or you can convert from one image format to another, or one audio or video format to another as well. Obviously, as audio and video might become more adopted, obviously it's already in place, the adoption to standardize those formats as well and harmonize on consistent file formats. So again, there can be conversions beyond just to PDF. It can be for any other use cases across the organization. Email allows you to basically connect, use email as a repository. So as well as looking into SharePoint for content that needs to be converted, you can monitor different inboxes for incoming messages from the health authority or internally, pull the attachments, process the attachments in the same way that you convert any other document, convert them, merge everything together, and store the results either back in SharePoint or any other repository that you may have in use as well. Obviously, you do have insights as well, which is, I'll show you in a moment, is a series of metrics. I'll show you a couple of screens. And OCR is just an element to obviously automatically OCR your content to make it searchable, text searchable as part of that conversion or processing as well. Just a quick example of a use case is that, where you may, as I say, we support different repository types. So you can take content from one repository, process it, and then have the results pushed out somewhere else. So the platform can be used or leveraged as part of a migration effort as you move from one platform to another. Either you can just literally pass it straight through and it can help you categorize content in a different platform, or it can be processed first before you put it in. So you could take a whole series of Word documents. You can say you don't need the Word, convert to PDF and store the PDF in a target system as well. So it can be useful in migration efforts as well. The insights, the metrics ultimately allow us to analyze, how much the system has been used. So if you're a service organization or a CRO serving multiple customers, it's very useful to be able to see, for different workflows, how much volume has gone through the system as well. So you can kind of break it down a little bit by group, or even within one single organization, which departments have used the system more as well. So you can see how much they've processed as well as a breakdown of what types of files, the size of the files, the times of day that the processing takes place. So you can turn systems off if you're not using them from midnight till 6. You can turn systems off, which is useful if you're hosting environments. You can kind of save on cost by shutting systems down at periods when you're not actually rendering anything. You can help you identify those periods. Obviously, in terms of conclusions, Eric, briefly, just going back to those challenges. Again, a lot of what we do really is aimed at targeting some of these challenges, really speeding up the entire process by removing these manual steps and the resource intensiveness of using manual tools to kind of help you, prepare your content, whether that's, preparing the individual content or the reports, whatever it may be. Again, because you're automating things, you're by default typically reducing the risk. As long as you're confident in that automated process, the risk is reduced from human error. And obviously you're reducing the complexity of the entire process as well, which reduces your training burden. So ultimately, that's what we're looking to target. Again, the whole idea is time saving through automation. Again, multiple workflows to handle different use cases that you may have. So with that, again, if you do want to see anything in more detail, I know that was very quick, just kind of idea showing you, touching on various points, that we can handle. It'd be good to obviously get your feedback. I think Alp may have a quick poll sort of coming up. If you do want to reach out, as I say, the link should be in the comments in the chat box at the bottom. It would be useful to get your feedback. And again, we have ran webinars with more detail here as well. But as I say, we'd be happy to have a separate one-on-one discussion with you to go through those things as well. As I say, please feel free to reach out. And I'm just talking while the poll results are coming in. But as I say, thanks everybody for your time. Anybody who has asked questions in the chat, we will get back to you. I apologize. I know we've already used up the half an hour. So I will get back to you on any questions that have been posed as well, and hopefully speak to some of you on either a future one-on-one call or see you in a future webinar. So thanks everybody, and have a great evening or morning, rest of the day, wherever you are. Thanks again.